Detroit Tigers officially will move on from FanDuel Sports Network as a new era of broadcasting is underway.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. How's it going, everybody? Hope you're all having a fantastic week so far as we are officially post-Super Bowl. It is baseball season as far as I am concerned and as far as many other people are concerned as well. As we speak right now, we are a mere 24 hours away from the official first report date for the Detroit Tigers. Now, a handful of players have already reported, and once we get our great beat writers and our eyes and ears down there in Lakeland, we will have a better understanding of who's already there and who isn't. But the pitchers and catchers' first report date is on February 11th for your Detroit Tigers, and I cannot wait to make that everybody else's problem. So, on today's show, we're going to end by talking about some news and notes from around the league. Just some other, there's pretty decent moves that were made, trades, signings, etc. on Monday. So we'll talk about that. Also going to talk about, well, some more mailbag questions and answer some more. We got a handful of really good questions through Twitter. So we'll go through those as we have not had time. This always happens. Every single time that I want a mailbag and want to do a mailbag show, the Tigers actually do something incredibly important. And it just derails kind of the timeline for everything. So we'll get back on track and kind of finish up answering those questions that we weren't able to get to last week. But we're going to start off by talking about the biggest news from Monday in the Tigers universe, and that is that the Tigers have officially found a new broadcast home for the 2026 season, and it is Major League Baseball. So, what does this mean? First off, this is incredibly exciting, and I am totally in favor of it. I think that this is going to be so much better for so many people. I think that this is a win for the consumer. And these days, we will absolutely take those whenever we can get them. I think let's just go through kind of some of the facts and some of the stuff that we know so far. So, Tigers games will be available through MLB, effective immediately. Also, the Detroit Red Wings will be available through MLB. Now, that's the umbrella company, MLB, NHL, all one and the same when you go down the rabbit hole far enough. But that will be how the Red Wings will not be on FanDuel Sports Network either. Obviously, it makes sense. Both Ilitch-owned entities. The Red Wings will not take effect until after this season ends, as they're already, 2/3 of the way done with this NHL season. But the Tigers, that is effective right now. Starting in, when spring training games are going to get televised, they're going to be through this new method, if you will. The Pistons, nothing has been announced yet, and I find that interesting. I would imagine that they will join the Ilitch teams. The only reason I say that is A, because of like practicality and market, but B, there has been conversations between Ilitch and Gores going back to like 2016 even, about making, a Detroit-based media entity. And I've been saying entity a lot today. That's kind of weird, if you will. So I think that may be something in the future. But for right now, it's just the Ilitches that we know of. It will be available presumably, this is what the press release said. So take that with, I don't know, as you will be available through cable, through streaming, and through satellite. All of those options, they will have an avenue, if you will, for Tigers games to be broadcasted on all three of those, which is fantastic news. I think one of I was talking to my dad on Monday when this was announced, and one of the biggest points he said was just like he's watched less baseball in the last 2 years than he had, in the previous 20, just because they keep changing everything, and there's just a different app you have to get and a different service you have to get, and it's not even on all cable providers, right? Like all of this stuff. And he's just hoping that this means that it's going to be much more accessible, kind of how it used to be, where it's just like, this is what channels the game is on and whatever. Obviously, again, still streaming and all of that will be not only available, but will probably be prevalent, because that is just the way that technology and kind of the way of the world at this point. So I'm really excited about all of these things. And I would imagine that it's going to look like a lot of what other MLB teams have done already, which is basically MLB TV without blackouts in your area. So as someone like myself, I get MLB TV every year and I use it all the time. I would imagine that, especially if it's through Major League Baseball, there will be something in there where I just pay, I don't know, however much more a month and get MLB TV plus my in-market team, and I can just watch it all and stream it all from the MLB TV website or app, etc. We'll see what happens with cable and satellite. Again, those are the plan right now is for those to obviously be options as well, but they got to pick, what channel it's going to be and how, what provider it's going to be a part of, et cetera, et cetera. Sounds like all of the on-air talent will be retained from both teams, if you care about the Red Wings as well. Brian and I actually talk about it a little bit on Locked On Red Wings, so you can go check that out today too for more of the Red Wings angle. But it does sound like that all of the on-air talent is going to be retained. And this was kind of, I don't want to say predicted necessarily, but this was, it didn't take a rocket scientist to find out that this was like kind of coming. And one of the big reasons why I say that is I can remember when the Tigers signed Benetti. I remember coming on this show and on that episode, like Benetti is a Tiger, that episode from 2 years ago now, I remember talking about the fact that, hey, the Tigers gave him a contract, not FanDuel Sports Network. Well, it's technically the parent company, whatever. It changes literally every 5 weeks, so I don't even keep track anymore. But this isn't, his contract is through the Tigers, and the Red Wings have a couple of people on their, side of things that are through the Red Wings and not necessarily through the broadcast. But that's kind of case to case and individual to individual. So it sounds like everybody's going to make the transition over. Like I said, I think this is really exciting. Hopefully this is something that will be sustainable. That's kind of my biggest ask at this point, is just, I think that baseball is in a pretty good spot right now, to be honest with you. I know that there's, the pending lockout or impending lockout that could happen in 2027 and whatnot, but like viewership has been way up, especially since the what's the word I'm thinking of? The introduction, I'll go with, that's not the word I was thinking of the pitch clock, right? Like it got kind of casual viewers a lot more interested and willing to watch baseball again. So I think that baseball's viewership and numbers have been going up. I think it's in honestly a point of growth, assuming that they play baseball in 2027 and don't just completely throw away all the progress they've made over the last few years. And I think that a consistent way where everybody knows going into the season how we're going to watch Tigers games and baseball games months in advance. It's been like 4 years since we've been 100% confident in February about how we're going to view, Tigers games for the upcoming season. So that's really my biggest ask, is just make something that is actually going to be a sustainable way of life for these broadcasts. Okay, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Let's get into the mailbag portion of today's show. We'll do that right after this. First, though, got to talk to y'all about our good friends over at TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork that may come along with that. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s, self-employment forms, and work to get you every single deduction possible. You can upload your documents and go about your day and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it personally. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a TurboTax local expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file your taxes last year, you just have to file by February 28th of this year. So take taxes off of your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back tomorrow, as we always are. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in and making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. The amount of growth we've seen over the last few years has been phenomenal. And our next step in that is the Everydayer Club. You can visit lockedonpodcasts.com/everydayer and join the Locked On Tigers Everydayer Club today. You'll get ad-free audio of this show, as well as access to a members-only Discord server where other everydayers of the program and myself all interact with each other, which will be a lot of fun as games start being played. We had a few conversations when Fromber signed, but obviously when they're playing ball games, that'll be a very fun avenue as well. Want to get into some mailbag questions that we just did not simply have time to answer last week after the Valdez signing. Got a few more, not a ton, but 3-4 questions remaining that I all thought were really good and kind of time, dude, is my brain is I give up. My brain is not working today. Time not important. They're timely. They're timely. First question we have is from Rich. It says it's a Torkelson question. If Torkelson puts up another 30-plus home run season in 2026, how do the Tigers not extend him? His logic, he says, there are a lot of left-handed hitters on the roster. You have Green, Carpenter, Keith, Meadows, McKinstry. Your top 4 minor league hitters, McGonigle, Clark, Rayner, Briseño, all left-handed hitters. You have 0 consistent right-handed power on the roster, sans Torkelson. If they get rid of Tork, where are they going to get their next right-handed hitting bat, let alone a 30-plus power one? They have no one in the system that he knows of. And if they had to pay for one in free agency, it certainly wouldn't be before I can't read. He can write fine. It certainly wouldn't be for a 26 to 27-year-old with 30 home run, with multiple 30-plus home run seasons. Those guys don't get free in good organizations. I know he's a Boris guy, so there is an issue. So honestly, the Boris thing doesn't bother me too terribly much with a first baseman, just because Boris is really good at his job because he knows the value of all of his players. I think there's this perception that Boris just gets $500 million for every single player that's in his agency. half the league is a Boris client. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even just like, oh, it's just the superstars or whatever. Like, no, there's plenty of guys that are, bench guys, super utility guys that are Boris clients too. He knows his value, and each of his clients' values rather. I think this is a fantastic point, and I think that it's, for me, a lot less about Torkelson specifically, as it is more just a big picture about where the heck are they going to get any right-handed production going forward. Harris has, I think, drafted very well in his time with the Detroit Tigers, and there's a lot of reasons to be excited about the farm system and kind of the direction of, the prospect pool that they're going to be pulling out of over the coming years. But the one thing that is impossible to ignore is that he loves lefties, loves them, absolutely adores left-handed hitters more than anything. And so there is a reasonable, I think, question to ask about where the right-handed production is going to get. I mean, even last year, we started talking about, like, they need a right-handed bat, like, in the lineup. This offseason, I read my own comment section. All of you were clamoring for them to go get a right-handed, power bat, presumably. And I don't think it's in the best interest to let one walk. Now, the interesting thing with Torkelson specifically, this is where I am going to try to play, detective here. I am interested in how the defensive profiles long-term of Torkelson versus, say, Briseño maybe line up at first base. Now, if Briseño ends up being a catcher, then we win the lottery. We have a guy that just hits absolute missiles all over the place and is a catcher and is a lefty hitter. That's awesome and wonderful, and we'll celebrate that, and that would be awesome. I'm not confident that Briseño is going to be a major league catcher. I think Lorenzo has a much better chance of that, but I mean, one's success isn't relying on the others, so like maybe they both are. My point being, I think there is a world in which the Tigers go, you know what? We will extend you, Torkelson, but you're going to be playing a lot of DH, and like if we need you in the lineup at first base any given night, then we can do that. It's still an AJ Hinch team, but we're going to extend you for DH money because we have a guy like Briseño, etc. I think it's a really interesting question. If he hits 30 plus this year, that's 3 seasons with 30 plus homers for him. Rather, I think quietly, if you're talking about, the coverage he gets nationally, there's still a lot of areas for him to improve. I don't want him to become the one tool player. But I think that it certainly will be in the conversation. I also think that positional value maybe lowers that number to a point where they will feel like they can get that done. But ultimately, if Torkelson thinks he's worth a lot more money than what the Tigers are willing to give him, they're not going to be pressed to do it either, because they do have guys like that, righty or lefty, be darned, kind of waiting in the wings. So I don't mean to like fence sit here. I think it's a really great question. And I think that they have a long-term kind of problem, if you will, quote unquote, about where they're going to get right-handed hitting production from long-term. But we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of ifs in that conversation, but I don't think it's completely out of the question, certainly. Next question we have is from Cam, who says, Vierling, possible DFA candidate before opening day. He's not sure how he fits into the team's plans. We will discuss that and more right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back. Your third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. Cam asked before the break if there was any legs to the possibility that Matt Vierling could be DFA'd before opening day. I won't rule anything completely out of the question, but I would be very surprised. And that's not to say that, his 2025 was obviously super unproductive. He barely played And when he did play, he wasn't very good. So all of that is totally fair. Honestly, I'm glad that I accidentally had these questions back to back because I think one almost kind of feeds into the other. Matt Vierling is one of the very few consistent right-handed hitters that the Tigers can put in this lineup. And especially with guys like Colt Keith doing so poorly against left-handed pitching last year. Kerry Carpenter, a question mark about whether that's, a viable bat against left-handers. Parker Meadows, big questions about whether that's a viable bat against left-handed pitching. Riley Green even. I don't think Riley Green's going to be a platoon anytime soon. I would disagree with that, and I think it's stupid. But, his numbers against lefties, far worse. We saw him pinch hit for in a lefty spot. Was that in the playoffs? Was that in the wild card round? Against Cleveland late in the season, if it wasn't the wild card round. So my point is there are far too many lefties that are not proven against left-handed pitching that play positions that Matt Vierling plays for me to think that he is going to get DFA'd. I also think that this isn't like a guy that has struggled mightily his whole major league career. 2 years ago in that 2024 run, he was one of the more productive position players on the entire roster, which is probably more of a testament to the roster itself than Matt Vierling. But if he can be a 740 OPS guy that plays, all three outfield positions and third base, the Tigers are going to be over the moon with that. So I would be surprised. But again, there's always a possibility, maybe he shows up to camp and he's completely lost the offense and lost his production from 2 years ago, and maybe he looks a lot different. But I would be pretty darn surprised if Matt Vierling wasn't on there. Now, long-term, there's a much different conversation about where he fits into the puzzle long-term, years in advance. But in 2026, I think there's enough there for him to have a pretty solidified spot. Our last mailbag question comes from Garrett, who asks if there's any possibility that Colt Keith could get reps in the outfield in 2026. Says it might make sense if McGonigle and Max Anderson both hit. I'll go with no. And the reason why is not because the Tigers are afraid of positional versatility. Okay. We all know that is the opposite of true. They are very keen, if you will, on having players being able to play as many different positions as possible. The reason why I say no is because I don't think there's actually a long-term need for it, even if Keith, McGonigle, and Anderson all hit and are all major league players. I still don't think after 2026 there's much of a need for that. Glaber is on a one-year deal. Glaber's gone after this upcoming season. After 2026, Glaber is on a different team. Almost assuredly. Not guaranteed. I said that last year too, and here he's back. But qualifying offer makes that a little bit unique. I would be shocked if Glaber was on this team after this season. So Colt Keith can then play either third base or second base. Max Anderson can play, hopefully, either third base or second base. And maybe your question lies in the fact that you're not confident in Kevin McGonigle playing shortstop at the major league level, which is totally fair. We have not seen anything that would indicate that he is like a guarantee to hit defensively at shortstop. But in theory, in February of 2026, it's possible for all three of those guys to play in the infield without having to move anyone to the outfield. Now, I also think that even if all three of them hit and you don't want McGonigle to play shortstop and he's more of a third baseman, I think they move Max Anderson to outfield before they move Colt Keith there. And that's because I don't think Max Anderson's a very good defender really anywhere in the infield up to this point in his career. Again, hopefully adjustments can be made. He's a minor leaguer. It's all about development. There's none that says he can't turn that around. But I think that that's some food for thought in that conversation as well. Also, there's just the fact that I don't think Colt Keith would be a very good outfielder. He doesn't have a very great arm ever since that injury he had in the minor leagues a few years back. But I think we saw some steps maybe in the right direction in that regard this past season and his few reps at third base. A lot of moving parts, a lot of puzzle pieces there. I think my biggest point with this before we move on is the reason that I don't think that happens is because the odds that it's very easy for us, and I am a victim of it too. I do it all the time. But it's important to remember that the likelihood that every prospect you have or every young player you have is just going to work out at that position and be like a career major leaguer with no questions asked there are especially when you're talking about three separate of those, profiles. Usually it doesn't work out that nicely. Usually. Which also means that, conversely, usually it figures itself out without having to do anything dramatic like put Colt Keith in right field. What are the odds that, well, you hope McGonigle and Keith at least both hit. What are the odds that Anderson is a solidified, plus bat big leaguer as well as those two guys figuring it out to that extent? I don't know. Again, usually those things just kind of have a way of figuring themselves out. Not every prospect is going to be a long-term major league solution for you. But we'll see. Not a now problem anyway, which, again, I guess is another reason. Not a problem. They don't have to figure that out by opening day. Odds are good that McGonigle and Anderson, neither of them are on the opening day roster. Even if McGonigle is, there's pretty much no chance I don't think that Anderson is. Doesn't mean he won't be at some point in 2026, just at the beginning of the season at least. Quick news and notes from around the league. No robo-umps in the World Baseball Classic, so there will be no challenge system for the WBC this year. However, for the first time ever, there will be a pitch clock in the WBC. Last WBC, which was 2022, 2023? It got all weird because of COVID and the timing wasn't what it usually is. There was no pitch clock in that tournament. There will be in this one. So take that as you will. Some news from the free agency world. Chris Paddack signs a one-year deal with the Miami Marlins. Obviously, Paddack was a Detroit Tiger down the stretch, was one of the acquisitions from the rather underwhelming trade deadline that the Detroit Tigers had in 2025. Did not do very well, was not even in the rotation by the end of the season, was barely a factor in those big games at the end of the season and in the postseason. Gets a one-year, $4 million deal to go be a part of the Marlins. So we'll see if he's able to bounce back. Paddack, such a weird career. I guess maybe he's a testament to what I was talking about earlier. Like, this is a guy that kind of splashed onto the scene, was fantastic in the early years of his career, especially he had 1 year with the Padres where he was phenomenal and was still very young and just has come nowhere close to replicating that sense. So hopefully he's able to find that in Miami, rooting for him. And then the big news from free agency on Monday is Marcell Ozuna is now Marcell Ozuna of the Pirates, which is interesting for a lot of reasons. One, I don't think the Pirates are that bad. And I know that I have been very vocal about every year the Pirates, this is the year that they turn it around, and I just never believe it. I might finally kind of believe, not that they're going to be like a powerhouse or anything, but I might be of the belief that the Pirates are going to be halfway decent this year. That lineup is not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And the rotation is actually pretty darn incredible. So I don't know. I find a move like that intriguing. The Pirates seem to be at least more aggressive in their free agent signing. We'll see if it's money well spent this upcoming season. But they seem to be a lot more aggressive than in years past as well. And yeah, man, it's been a while since the Bucks have been consistently good. It's been a long time. In my entire life, the Pirates have really only been good during that McCutchen, early McCutchen, Pirates versus Reds wild card game at PNC, Russell Martin home run, that era, Pedro Alvarez, if you will, Starling Marte. Yeah. That's really like the only time that the Pirates have been good, and that only lasted a few years. So we'll see if they can kind of ride the shoulders of Paul Skeens into the promised land here. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day, and we will, of course, be back tomorrow. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.